It's election night on Citrus TV.
Decision Night 2014 with lead analyst Nick Cardona, Anna Giles and Brian Chung live from the Issue Center. Alex Amico breaks down the numbers. Topher Lane, Max Darrow, and Caroline Strange cover the 24th Congressional District. And Molly Smith with all of your social media updates. From Citrus TV's election headquarters, this is Decision 2014.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Hunter Saenz. Pull up a chair and buckle in. It will be an eye-opening night as voters decide the future of our country. Will the Republicans get the 6 seats needed in order to gain the majority of the Senate, or will Americans be content with the status quo by keeping Democrats in control of the Senate? What are the issues at hand? What are the numbers? But most importantly, what message will Americans send? Polls have already closed in New Hampshire, North Carolina, Georgia, Kentucky, and Florida. Our wall-to-wall coverage of this historic night starts now with moderator of Citrus TV's Talking Points, Nick Cardona, and correspondent Alex Amico. Guys, what are the races looking like right now?
Hunter, thanks. Now, I'm bringing in Alex Amico, our congressional correspondent here. Now, we're looking at Kentucky with 50% of the polls reporting. What's going on there?
Right, so CNN has already projected that Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell will defeat Allison Lundgren Grimes and hold his seat there. They were able to call it with 6% of the vote in. Now, that was a seat that Democrats for a while thought they might have a chance to pick up. McConnell is not a tremendously popular guy. He had a difficult primary challenge. And they had a pretty strong candidate there with Allison Lundgren Grimes, but just recently, in the past few weeks, it started to sort of slip out of the reach. McConnell started to pull ahead. It was hard for Grimes to shake that label of her being attached to Obama, and the gaffe a couple weeks ago where she refused to say whether or not she voted for President Obama in 2008, 2012, that was really the nail in the coffin for her campaign. So now it looks like McConnell's going to hold on to a seat comfortably and one step closer to the job he's always wanted, which is Senate Majority Leader. Now, what you mentioned from Grimes not mentioning who she voted for. Mm-hmm. What else went wrong with her campaign? Well, I think one big thing in Kentucky is coal. And Mitch McConnell, he was really able to tie her to the, quote, Democratic war on coal, made a big issue about that in the campaign, and really just tying her to the National Party was really key for McConnell's campaign. All right, and then we're looking at Arkansas in our final 30 seconds. What's going on there? Right, Arkansas has been trending toward Tom Cotton, Republican Tom Cotton, for a while, looking like he'll probably unseat Mark Pryor. The polls have been going that way. He's been leading by 3 to 13 points in the past month. Barring an act of God or some tremendous collapse, Pryor's going to lose his seat tonight. All right, well, Alex Amico, thank you so much. Now, if you want to follow us over here, we're going to go to our issue center, and we're going to talk all the issues that affected voters in Kentucky. Now, Anna Giles, our issue center analyst, is here. Now, Anna, what are the major issues affecting Kentucky voters that decided Mitch McConnell's fate?
You know, Nick, I'm not surprised by CNN's call of Kentucky for McConnell. I mean, if you let's look at the 2012 presidential poll numbers. Mitt Romney, the Republican contender at that time, won 60.5% of the vote in Kentucky, while Obama had 37.8%. So again, not surprised. Alex there mentioned a few of the top issues that they were dealing with in this campaign, mostly coal and Grimes's attachment to the Obama administration. Flat out, she didn't come out, she didn't declare whether or not she would vote for Obama, which is a huge thing that McConnell used against her. Now, the reason coal was so big in Kentucky was the fact that the Obama administration he compelled the EPA, or by an executive order, to issue new regulations that would reduce carbon emissions. So that's kind of the big controversy there. That's why coal ended up being such a huge issue in that sense, because McConnell was trying to tie Grimes to that policy, but she's come out and saying, trying to distance herself from Obama and say, I actually would support coal. That's something we're not in support of EPA, Environmental Protection Agency regulations that would, reduce carbon emissions. So a lot of, a lot of buzz has been caused by Chuck Todd, the moderator of Meet the Press, who actually he appeared in a McConnell ad saying that
Grimes should just disqualify herself from the election, which apparently that saying that she didn't vote for Obama, or that she did not want to say who she voted for, that played an effect in that. Was that the major thing for her?
Yeah, she had a tough battle. I mean, and this is a common theme that we'll see throughout all elections, is that, you know, Republicans are trying to portray Democrats as close to President Obama. Definitely the case with Grimes.
All right, Anna Giles in our Issue Center. Thanks so much. Hunter will be following some more races in our next break. Well, for now, we'll send it back over to you.
All right, Nick, thanks so much. We now have Molly Smith joining us on all of our social media updates. Molly, what have you been seeing throughout the day?
Thanks, Hunter. Now I want to talk to you guys about a little bit of what our celebrities have been telling us today. Lil Jon, famous rapper, flew all the way from LA to Atlanta today, saying that his home state of Georgia did not send him an absentee ballot, and he felt it absolutely necessary to go out there and vote. You can see his Facebook post here. Turn out for what? Looking out next to Kim Kardashian, her literally standing next to President Obama here, and that she's standing with him throughout these midterm elections. Obama, of course, not due for re-election for another 2 years. You can take a look at also Modern Family actor Jesse Tyler Ferguson giving an incentive to voters in that maybe you can take a selfie with an I voted sticker today. So another incentive to get out there and vote. Taking a look at then Kristen Bell, star from Frozen. If you don't vote on Tuesday, you're surrendering your right to complain about anything other than your service at a restaurant. So telling voters to then let it go with their voice and their vote. And looking last at Usher, again, urging voters to get out there and vote today and really to make informed decisions on where the issues are and where they're polling. Hunter, back to you.
All right, Molly, thanks. When we come back, we'll take a look at the 24th Congressional District race. Max Darrow will map out each candidate's political background. Stay with us.
Turning a 20-foot wall into a canvas takes vision. So will getting into college. I've got what it takes. So do you.
In 1977, an 8-year-old boy picked up the game of golf from his father. The odds of that same boy then making it to the US and European Pro Golf Tours, 1 in 7 million. The odds of the Big Easy winning the US Open twice, 1 in 1.2 billion. The odds of him having a child diagnosed with autism, 1 in 110. Ernie Els encourages you to learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
Welcome back to the midterm election special. Citrus TV's political reporter Max Darrow analyzed the 24th Congressional District race. Max, tell us about the candidates.
Thanks, Hunter. Now, Citrus TV reporter Claire Moran and I took an in-depth look at both of the candidates. Let's get to know John Katko.
John works with everybody. And in this day and age, when the real criticism in Congress has been an inability for people to work together, John will work with everyone.
The Republican candidate was endorsed by Onondaga County Executive Joanne Mahoney, as well as by House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy. Katko is a former federal prosecutor. He helped create the Syracuse Gang Violence Task Force and is a native of Onondaga County. Katko is not a supporter of Obamacare. To him, it's created a burden on the small businesses, the middle class, and seniors. He believes lower premiums are the answer and that government needs to restore cuts to Medicare. As for the economy, Katko is committed to reforming the federal budget process, cutting spending, and endorsing spending caps. Katko wants to decrease regulations on smaller businesses and is committed to local manufacturing. Now, moving to education, the Republican wants to reduce the burden of student loans. He does not support Common Core and believes there needs to be more government funding for the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And now we'll take a closer look at the incumbent representative, Dan Maffei.
Dan is the son of Central New York.
Representative Maffei was recently endorsed by Vice President Joe Biden and former President Bill Clinton. He's the current representative of the 24th Congressional District. He was elected in 2008, lost his seat in 2010, but was re-elected in 2012. Maffei is also a local. He graduated from Nottingham Senior High School in 1986. Maffei does not believe the Affordable Care Act is a great piece of legislation, but he finds it essential that Central New Yorkers have access to high-quality health care at a low cost. However, he's consistently voted against a complete repeal of the act. Small business is good business to Maffei. He pledges to help small businesses find ways for success. In his words, a strong middle class creates a strong economy. He plans to create jobs in all 4 counties of the district. Maffei believes that education is the backbone of a strong middle class, and he is pro-Common Core and has a plan with 6 goals for improving the quality of education in the 24th district. Now, as of the most recent polls, Katko is up 10 points. But this race is so tight it could go either way.
That indeed, it's a very close race. It always has been. So what's one of the deciding factors?
You know, there's a lot of complex factors in any race, but I have to go with natural factors today. It was a beautiful day. There was nothing stopping voters from coming out and just voting. So it's just going to be who really decided to show up today.
Good weather equals hopefully good turnout at the polls. Max Darrow, thank you for joining us. As we said at the top of the broadcast, the Democrats will need to win at least 6 seats to hold on to the majority of the Senate. 2 of those states are in Colorado and Kansas. Let's turn it back over to Nick and Alex to take a deeper look into those races.
All right, Hunter, thanks. Well, we're actually going to turn to North Carolina with we have about 21% of the vote in. Alex, what are you seeing in those polls?
So, North Carolina, first of all, Democratic incumbent Kay Hagan has run probably the best campaign out of all the vulnerable Democrats this election cycle. It's also the only race in the top 10 Senate races where Democrats have outspent Republicans, $40.6 million to $39.9 million. One of the other recent developments is President Obama recently cut a last-minute radio advertisement, which kind of shows that they want to drive up turnout, specifically urban turnout for Kay Hagan, try to run up the score in the cities so that she doesn't have to worry about losing the rural vote. So that seat is probably pretty safe for the Democrats. It's going to be close, but I think Hagan holds on to that.
Now moving to Georgia, where we've been following some races as well, incumbent, well, there's no incumbent,
right.
Michelle Nunn, who is the son of a former senator of Georgia, or the daughter of a former the senator of Georgia, that we have 5% of the vote in. What are you seeing there? Right,
well, it's really too close. It's obviously too close to call right now. That race is most likely going to go to a runoff, and that runoff will be January 6th. Again, similar to North Carolina, Nunn is trying to drive up turnout in the cities, try to get the Democratic base out and try to help flip an otherwise very red state. However, a runoff would favor Republicans. There was a runoff in 2008 when Senator Saxby-Chambliss was reelected. It went to a runoff in the general election, but then in the runoff, Saxby-Chambliss actually won by 14 points. So if this does go to runoff, it does favor the Republicans.
All right, so Alex D'Amico, thank you so much. We're going to walk on over here to our issue center again. Giles is standing by. What are the major issues in play here in North Carolina?
Right, yeah, let's start with North Carolina, looking at the race between Kay Hagan and Thom Tillis. You know, looking back at 2012, again, just getting some comparison here, Romney won this state, had 50% of the vote, and Obama had 48%. So as Alex said, it's a very close race, you know, if you look at historical context here. But, you know, some of the major issues we saw was education is really big in North Carolina. The state public university system is really highly respected there. So Kay Hagan really went after Thom Tillis in terms of education. Tillis, you know, he's been eroded by controversial cuts that he had back when he worked in the state legislature. He cut some parts of education. But, you know, he's also trying to portray, again, that's like another confusing issue because it all depends on how you portray it. You know, Republicans argue that Tillis has a compelling story to tell on education, you know, including he raised teacher pay and he increased the education budget. So again, it's kind of tit for tat there. We see a lot of that coming out in political ads as well. It's all how you kind of skew the issue.
Now, another deep South state here in Georgia. You know, I mean, Michelle Nunn is trying to make history here as a, you know, again, another Nunn in the White House, in the Georgia State Senate, and the Georgia Senate. So what's going on there? What are the major issues at play?
Right, and as you pointed out earlier, there's no incumbent here. So a lot of the race has been about who they would be as a senator. It's been portraying, I mean, none of them have an electoral experience. So they've got to try and sell themselves to voters as a strong legislator. And fun fact about Michelle Nunn, her father Sam Nunn was a major architect of nuclear weapons legislation that dealt with nuclear weapons in Russia. So she's definitely using his popularity both domestically and internationally to kind of propel herself.
Are Republicans trying to tie her to her father, or is that?
No, she is. She's very, she's trying to use his positive influence in the sense that he came across with, again, this huge agreement, bipartisan agreement in Congress that led to securing nuclear weapons in Russia, huge big thing decades ago, and she's trying to use that popularity to kind of propel her election a little bit more.
All right, Anna Giles in our issue center. Thanks. Now, Hunter, back over to you. We're going to be talking about some major national issues and international issues facing voters with Brian Chung after the break, but for now we'll send it back to you.
Nick, thanks. Coming up, a look at the key issues of the 24th Congressional District race. We'll be right back.
Hey, I'm Anderson Cooper. As a parent, you want to make sure that your child knows how to deal with bullying when they see it happening. And chances are they want to help, but they don't really know how. I'll teach them that the best thing to do is calmly walk away, find a teacher or other adult, and speak up. And do your part. Be that adult they can talk to and trust will listen. Join me to help stop bullying. Go to stopbullying.gov to find out more.
Today, about 1 in 5 Americans is living with a disability. Over 50 million people, including many of our friends and neighbors, teachers and co-workers, heroes and leaders. 20 years ago, the Americans with Disabilities Act guaranteed every person the right to live, work, and participate fully in the American experience. We've come a long way since then, and we are committed to making even more progress in the years ahead. Visit disability.gov to see how you can help.
You realize that 49 million Americans struggle with hunger? That's 1 out of every 6 Americans. These people are around us every day. They're our friends, they're our coworkers, their kids go to school with our kids. Sometimes we're not even aware that they're struggling. This problem is closer than you think. So is the solution.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
Welcome back to Citrus TV's Election Night coverage. Joining me now to discuss the issues of the 24th Congressional District race is our local correspondent, Topher Lane. So, Topher, the biggest issues between this Dan Maffei and John Katko race, what are they?
A lot of it has to come down to health care, Obamacare. Katko is really adamantly against health care and the Obamacare Act and the Affordable Care Act. So he really cares about the taxes that it's putting on Central Americans, wants to bring down taxes, wants to bring down spending in Washington. He's also adamantly against Maffei's stance being in Washington, that he feels like he's moved away from the central New York area and that he's really kind of lost touch with the central New York area. So he's trying to regain the vote of the people of central New York and stay in central New York with the people here.
Now, in the past, it's been a tough race, close race indeed. Is this year any different?
No, this is definitely one of the closer races that central New York has seen, that the 24th District has seen. But in past years, it's been very close. This year, polls have been swinging around, so it's tough to say how close it can be. But I'm thinking close to like 52, 48, somewhere along those lines.
All right, so polls close here at 9. How was voter turnout today?
I think it was pretty good. Typically, we see around a 52% turnout. Last election, in the presidential election of 2012, we saw, I think, 68%. So a crazy difference in numbers, but I think it's supposed to return back down into the mid-50s. So we should see a lot of people coming out, hopefully coming out to vote. It's an important election year in the 24th District, so a lot of people coming.
All right, Topher Lane, thank you for joining us. We'll see you later in the broadcast. For now, let's take it back over to another Senate race breakdown with Alex and Nick.
All right, Hunter, thank you so much. Alex, what are we looking at in Colorado?
Colorado, that's been a bit of a surprise this election cycle. It started out leaning towards the Democrats, but in the past month, Republican candidate Cory Gardner, he's led 14 out of the 15 polls. Democrats are still hoping to pull out a win there. One of the things they're hoping for is every Colorado registered voter got a mail-in ballot this year and had the option to either mail it back or vote in person. So they are hoping that the polls are going to mispredict it and to take that. It's going to be a close one. It'll be interesting to see how this goes.
Now, one of the most interesting races that we've been following on Talking Points all semester has been the Kansas Senate race, where there is no Democratic candidate.
Right.
There's an independent and there's a Republican incumbent, Sam Roberts, and Greg Orman, the independent candidate. Now, what's going on there? What are we seeing?
Right. Pat Roberts had a brutal primary for the Republican nomination, and it was expected he would win in a walk after that, but Orman really started to raise a lot of money, started to turn a lot of heads, and then when the Democrat dropped out, he started to pull very well with Pat Roberts toward the end. Right now it's looking like Roberts has closed the gap some. At one point, Orman was leading by as much as 9 points. Right now, it's a close election, but part of the reason that Orman is still managing to stay ahead is there's not a lot of anti-Republican sentiment in Kansas, where Republicans actually outnumber Democrats 2-1, but there's a lot of anti-Washington sentiment right now. A lot of people are tired of incumbents. There's a lot of incumbent blues this election cycle. So Orman's been doing very well. It'll be interesting. It would be pretty embarrassing for the Republicans to lose this seat, a seat that's been held by Republicans since 1930.
Now, Joe Biden had a little gaffe of his own, talking about whether or not Greg Orman would caucus with either the Democrats or the Republicans. What happened there?
Yeah, Joe Biden said in a speech recently, I'm thinking an independent's going to win in Kansas and he's going to caucus with us. Not the best thing for the Orman campaign. They're already trying to show Orman as an independent. Roberts' campaign has actually run a lot of ads saying that a vote for Orman is a vote for the Obama-Reid liberal agenda. So it's really not good for the Orman campaign, but he has since disavowed that. He's already said he won't vote for either Harry Reid or Mitch McConnell. It'll be interesting to see how that race turns out.
All right, Alex Amico will be following those races much more closely throughout the broadcast. Now we're going to go over again to our issue center, and we're joined by Anna Giles and Brian Chung as well. Now, Anna, I want to start with you. What are the local issues affecting voters in Colorado and Kansas?
Colorado, very interesting. Let's start with Colorado, Nick. So we've got Mark Udall versus Cory Gardner. 2012, Obama had 51.5% of the vote here, and Romney 46%. So pretty close. The two big issues in Colorado are climate change and abortion. So there's an amendment on the Colorado ballot. This is outside of a normal election that that would limit legal abortions, and that's been a huge issue. There was kind of a funny thing here. Mark Udall was dubbed Senator Mark Uterus. So it's he's very obviously pro rights for women on this, and his opponent's been very much he's voted for policies that limit abortions, but he's kind of flip-flopped on that as well. So it's been a very muddled issue on that. And climate change, another big one. Mark Udall cited climate change as one of the biggest differences between him and his challenger, Cory Gardner. Mr. Gardner said he thinks that the climate is changing, but questions the extent of human involvement. So he's kind of one of those skeptics there. So definitely two big issues, abortion and climate change there in Colorado.
Now, Brian, I want to bring you in with the kind of national issues that are affecting this race. We have ISIS, we have Ebola. What are the main issues affecting both voters in Kansas and Colorado on the national, international scale?
Now let's address those two elephants in the room first, ISIS and Ebola. Now with ISIS particularly, Republicans in Senate races have actually used it in some cases to actually criticize what Obama's doing, saying that he's not being aggressive enough in terms of dealing with ISIS. New Hampshire's Scott Brown and Colorado's Cory Gardner also were some of those candidates that used that as a platform to criticize their Democratic challengers. Now going to Ebola is not something that's kind of pro or con, obviously. No one's pro-Ebola, but it is an issue that people are saying Obama and the administration and Congress need to step it up and put a pressure on the CDC to come up with more preventative measures to deal with those. But let's move to the domestic issues. Economic recovery and immigration are big things that the American people want to deal with. And economic recovery, there has been some rebound, but they want to see it go a little farther. If you remember in 2011 and 2013, there was that gridlock over the budget that almost sent the government into a shutdown. They want to avoid that again, but with a possible Democratic president and a potentially Republican-controlled Senate, there could be that problem again. And then obviously with immigration, there's a whole lot of issues between the House and the Senate. The Senate tried to get a bipartisan legislation in to deal with the borders, but unfortunately that was turned down by the House. Whether or not that will continue is leading into that issue with gridlock, again, with the Congress and the president obviously fighting each other.
All right, well, Anna and Brian will be focusing on those issues throughout the broadcast. Now, Hunter, before we send over to you, we're going to talk about the Florida governor's race, the Wisconsin governor's race, and the Kansas governor's race coming up after the break. But for now, we'll send it back over to you.
All right, guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much. We have some breaking news coming in. Florida governor's race. They were trying to extend the polls by 2 hours, but a judge went ahead and struck that down. Right now, Rick Scott, the Republican, has a 48% to 47% lead over Charlie Crist. Again, that just came in. A judge struck that 2-hour attempt to extend the polls, struck it down. Well, joining us now is Molly Smith. So, Molly, talk about this 24th Congressional District. It's a close one. What is it going to look like, though?
When we say every vote counts, this race is the exact definition of that. The incumbent Democrat right now, Dan Maffei, made a request yesterday to the state Supreme Court, an impounding request, requesting that the votes don't officially be counted until after Election Day. So we actually will not know today the official winner of this race.
Wow.
It is that close to call.
Well, that close. All right, well, we knew it was, so we'll just have to see how it pans out throughout the night, and hopefully we'll know by sometime soon at least, maybe by the morning. All right, thanks as always, Molly. The State by State will dive into some big gubernatorial races in Wisconsin, Florida, and Kansas. Stay with us on Election Night 2014.
Be part of the first class. Get energized. Get outside.
Hold on, guys. It's gonna get bumpy.
And get moving. Experience the power of physical activity. Join the movement at ActionHeroAlliance.com.
So, I just moved in with this family, and it's embarrassing. The little one, he likes to go outside and crawl around in the giant litter box. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I was born and I knew how to use the litter box. Look at that. That's disgusting. Oh, poop already. You're making me nervous. Oh, okay, I can't look at this anymore. I really hope he grows out of this, for his sake.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds.
Welcome back. The 65th annual Spaghetti Dinner at Our Lady of Pompeii took place today. Citrus TV's Caroline Strange is here at our election headquarters to tell us more about the fundraiser that draws in all local political figures.
Well, Hunter, the Cathedral Academy certainly was busy today as their cafeteria was flooded with families, voters, and candidates this year. They started about 5:30 this morning cooking the food and putting all the finishing touches on the tables. They had over 6,000 meatballs, that's over 1,000 pounds of meat, and they've had over 100 volunteers helping them along the way. Lucy Parris, one of the organizers, has been very excited about this event.
And we love it here, and we love all the people, and we love the traditions involved. And that we have so many wonderful volunteers that it all gets done pretty quickly.
The students in the school welcomed visitors with banners and decorations in the hallway, and before too long, the room was packed with friends, family, and our local politicians. Both John Katko and Dan Maffei made an appearance, but unfortunately, we didn't get to talk to both of them. Katko did say he was ready for tonight and at peace because he and his team had done everything they needed to. But back to the food, Paris said it was quite the process to put it all together.
A week ago Saturday, we made over 6,000 meatballs, and of course the next day we made sauce, and we put the meatballs in the sauce like Italians do.
The dinner was used as a fundraiser for the church and received donations from various groups, as you can see on these signs.
All right, well, Caroline, so were there any political figures there today?
Yes, as I said, John Katko and Dan Maffei were both there. One of the comptrollers running for state comptroller, Robert Antonici, who's the Onondaga comptroller right now, he's challenging Democrat Thomas DiNapoli to be the state comptroller. He was there as well, and some of his supporters, they were all wearing the pins to support him there.
Absolutely. What was the atmosphere like there?
Very loud, very rowdy. There were a lot of people. They had music. Someone was singing live, so the feedback was a little loud some of the time too. But just a large gathering of of people. Everybody was very excited. One of the things that Lucy Paris said was that party lines are left at the door. They just come together to have a good time. There's no sort of extra campaigning going on while they're there. It's just a good time for everybody to get together, have lunch. It started out for the poll runners, actually, because it had been a polling place before. So right now it's just a gathering for everybody to have a good time.
All right, that's right. It's election day, so they're putting a little congratulation dinner together. Thank you so much, Caroline. And as we promised you, their governor's mansion, well, the race for the governor's mansion are heating up in 3 states. Let's take it over to Nick and Alex for the latest updates.
All right, Hunter, thanks so much. Before we get to Wisconsin, Florida, and Kansas, we have some updates on Pennsylvania's governor race. What happened there?
Right, Governor Tom Corbett lost his bid for re-election to Democrat Tom Wolf. Corbett is the first governor in Pennsylvania history to lose in his bid for re-election, so big development there.
All right, so let's go into Florida now. We have about 87% of the vote coming in. The incumbent, Rick Scott, is in the lead right now by 3 percentage points. What's the latest going on there?
This is one of the closest races in the country, and it's also one of the ugliest races in the country. There's been about $81 million on TV ads spent in this race, mostly negative. It's been back and forth. Both sides have been smearing the other side. It's been a very rough election for both candidates. And what a lot of people in Florida are saying, they're not saying, I'm voting for Charlie Crist, I'm voting for Rick Scott, they're saying, I'm voting against Rick Scott, I'm voting against Charlie Crist.
And their approval ratings are both under 50%.
Right, both of their approval ratings and both their trustworthy ratings are hanging around or under the 50% mark. So not a great race.
And that has to do a lot with Charlie Crist. He was a former Republican as well. So
right, that's one of the things that Republicans are hitting Crist for. He was a Republican, then he was an independent he was a Republican, he lost his bid for the Senate nomination, then he tried to run as an independent, and then he became a Democrat. So Republicans are hitting him on the party switching and trying to portray him as untrustworthy and flip-floppers.
What are the other major issues going on in Florida?
Well, so what the Democrats are hitting back at with Rick Scott is they're calling him an extreme right-winger, attacking for his ties to the Tea Party. Specifically, they're bringing up cuts to education and voter ID laws. So those are some of the major issues right there.
So now, after Florida, we have Kansas, which is also a very heated governor's race as well. What's going on there with the incumbent Governor Brownback?
Right, there's not a whole lot of precincts reporting yet. Challenger Paul Davis is winning. It's a very interesting race. Brownback is when Brownback took office for the first time, he said that the state was going to be a quote real live conservative experiment. And it's interesting, usually when incumbents are in danger for re-election it's because they didn't do what they promised to do. But Brownback did everything that he promised to do. He cut taxes, he cut education spending, but unfortunately it didn't really work out well for them. There's been some problems with revenue and everything. So a lot of Kansans are very unhappy with him to the point where over 100 moderate Republicans actually, as a group, endorsed Davis, including a former Speaker of the Kansas House of Representatives. And that's a big deal in a state where, as I said earlier, Republicans outnumber Democrats 2-1.
So your projection for that governor's race, is it going to go with the incumbent, or what do you think? Can Davis?
It's going to be close, but I think Davis could end up pulling away with this one.
All right. So then Wisconsin. Now we don't have any polls reporting yet because the polls close at 9. But what are your projections going?
That's going to be a close one, and it's also big for its 2016 implications. Governor Scott Walker has been his name has been thrown around for a while as a 2016 candidate. He's got great conservative credentials with taking on the public sector unions and then surviving a recall election. It's going to be a close one, but it looks like he'll probably win re-election there.
What if he? I mean, a lot of things have been saying that about. What if he loses? Is that his end of his political career? Or do you think he can make a rebound if he loses?
I think it's probably a little difficult. It's probably the end of his 2016 ambitions. It's difficult to make a comeback in 2 years after losing the governor's elections. But I mean, we saw Richard Nixon lose the nomination for president a few times and end up coming back. Ronald Reagan ran for the nomination. So down the road, anything's possible, but he would probably have to put his future ambitions on hold if he loses this election.
So we're also focusing on a lot of other governor's races in this country. We're focusing on Georgia, which is actually an interesting governor's race between Jimmy Carter's grandson.
Right.
And so what's going on there?
Right. That one is similar to the Senate race. Both candidates are polling close to 50, maybe slightly above 50. It's going to be a close one, and it might require a runoff, but probably the Republican incumbent is going to pull that one out.
All right, Alex Amico, we're going to be following those races closely. Now we're going to move back over to the Issue Center with Anna Giles. Now we're talking Wisconsin voters and Scott Walker. What are the main issues that voters are going to the polls
That's right, Scott Walker, a very interesting race right there, just because of all the political battering he's been through. Again, like Alex mentioned, a recall election. He really took on the unions. Why he's so important to the Republican Party right now and why this has 2016 implications Republicans is the fact that Republicans are looking to see, can you take on the unions and survive politically? That's kind of, they're deciding this right now. Scott Walker survived the recall election we saw, by 6.8 percentage points. So he survived it quite significantly. Now they're looking to see again. So again, let's take a kind of a closer look at what happened here, what he did. So he released a state budget proposal that included limiting collective bargaining rights for public union workers. And in response, there were huge protests at the Capitol. We basically shut it down, Nick. And this eventually led to the recall effort. So the union, they pushed back extremely hard. They challenged the bill in court and lost. They tried to replace conservative members of the Supreme Court, but again, he prevailed. So what they're looking at in this race now is to see, can he continue to survive? If Scott Walker gets elected, as you guys were talking about, that's going to significantly propel his chances for 2016.
Now, if it's a closer race, I mean, he was mentioned for a VP spot in 2012 as well, alongside Governor Romney. Now, do you think the results of this election can kind of prompt him to a VP nomination as well in 2016?
Perhaps, yeah. They're really looking, I mean, it just really boils down to, he's been highly publicized for his moves against the unions. I mean, if he were to lose, would that completely take him out of the political public sphere? I think not. He survived this. He survived a recall election. It's kind of best 2 out of 3, so to speak. I don't think he would be totally dead on this.
All right, Anna Giles at the Issue Center. Thanks so much. Now, Hunter, we're going to have some updates on a lot of Iowa, New Hampshire, and Alaska poll numbers after the break. So, Hunter, back over to you.
All right, Nick, thanks. Those states and the latest numbers when we return to Election Night 2014.
Since I got adopted, I've learned a lot about these humans.
I know. I mean, check out these two. It's Flirt City over here.
Yeah, I noticed that. It looks like my human is definitely into your human.
Oh, look! I think she's getting his number.
Nice.
Your human's got some sweet moves.
Takes after his dog. Oh, look, they're doing that thing where they put their arms around each other.
She kicked up a leg. It's like in the movies.
That's awesome. Looks like we're gonna be hanging out a little bit more.
Welcome to my block party. Glad you can make it.
The only triple doubles you get come with fries.
Last time you blocked someone, you were online.
I can do this all day. Your moves are just gay.
Using gay to mean dumb or stupid, not cool.
Not cool.
Not in my house, not anywhere. It's not creative, it's offensive to gay people. And you're better than that.
And more breaking updates as we have Arkansas, which was a big contender for the Republicans. Tom Cotton is projected to win that state, beating out Pryor, who was that Democratic nominee. Also in Arkansas, Governor Hutchinson, Republican, will beat Mike Ross. That is a projection that we are ready to confirm. Also, coming up, well, we'll toss it right back over to Alex and Nick with the next Senate headlines.
All right, Hunter, thanks. So, Alex, we have Arkansas coming in. Let's talk a little bit about that. There's only 1% of the vote reporting.
Yeah.
So how are they able to make that projection?
Well, Cotton's been leading in polls by close to double digits for the past several weeks. There was likely some exit polls that pointed to a big Republican win there. It's an interesting reflection of Arkansas's shift toward the right in the past few years. When Mark Pryor first won election, a majority of the congressional delegation was Democrats. The state legislature was controlled by Democrats, and the governor was a Democrat. Now, as we just said, a Republican won the governorship. There is with the ousting of Mark Pryor, there are no Democrats in the congressional delegation, and the state legislature is controlled by Republicans. So it's an interesting look at the shift in Arkansas's politics over the past few years.
All right, so the other Senate races we're following are Alaska and Alaska. We'll talk about Alaska first because that's an interesting race that could have implications for a lot of different things for the calling of whether the Republicans take back the Senate.
Right, so it could take a while to call Alaska. Mark Begich has been in trouble for the past several weeks. Republican Dan Sullivan has been polling very well. It could take a while to call due to the spread out nature of the polling places and how long it takes to count the votes. Plus the polls close at midnight Eastern time, so it'll be a while before we know who wins Alaska. It's interesting. Begich is a Democrat. He's the first Democrat to be elected to that seat since 1974, and he won in 2008, which was a huge year for Democrats with Obama's first election. So it's interesting. It's sort of one of those things where a Democrat winning in a red state, in a big Democratic year, is going to then lose in a red state, and what's starting to look like a big Republican night.
So in our final 30 seconds, what do we have about New Hampshire going forward?
Right, New Hampshire, that's one of those states, again, Obama won that twice. Jeanne Shaheen had been polling pretty far ahead of challenger Scott Brown. It started to narrow in the past few days. It looks like Shaheen is going to hold her seat. If she doesn't, that signals you can take that to signal a big night for Republicans if Shaheen loses her seat to Republican Scott Brown.
All right, Alex Amico, thanks as always. We're going to go on over to the Issue Center with Anna Giles. Again, she is standing by. Now, what are the main issues going on in those races that you've been following?
Right, Nick, let's start off with Arkansas here. Again, if we look at the 2012 election, Mitt Romney had 61% of the vote and President Obama 37%. So if we look at kind of historical context here. Exactly. And so I'm surprised it's very close. Again, so the electorate in Arkansas has gradually become more conservative since Mark Pryor's been in there. But a lot of, again, Obama plays a huge role in this election here. Trying to tie the Democrats to him has been a huge component in Arkansas. And especially when it comes to Obamacare. They're both kind of, Pryor and Cotton, opposite sides of Obamacare. Pryor saying that it's good for people with pre-existing conditions. Pryor has suffered from cancer himself, so that may have helped a little bit with his opinion on that. Cotton has said it's just a complete drag on the economy and has a problem with the birth control mandate. So that's kind of where they stand on Obamacare. Are those stances surprising? No, not really. But the Affordable Care Act is very unpopular in Arkansas. So again, we have Mark Pryor trying to distance himself from that.
What's going on in Alaska and New Hampshire?
Alaska and New Hampshire. Okay, Alaska, again, a very interesting one there. If we look at the 2012 vote, Romney had 55% and Obama 41%. So still a big difference, but not as much as we're seeing in Arkansas. In Alaska, again, that's kind of one of those states. Votes are hard to count there. It's a very sparsed out population. A big issue in there are veterans. Veterans make up a significantly, I think it's about 30% of the population in Alaska are veterans. So veteran issues have been huge. We saw the huge Veterans Affairs scandal take place nationwide, in which veterans had wait times that were just ridiculous.
And that's going to have a negative impact on the Democratic
Extremely negative. The Obama administration is criticized for kind of fumbling that, not getting a good response out to it. They had their head of the VA had to resign as well. So again, just a whole mess, and that's again a huge issue in Alaska, considering a lot of people who live there are veterans.
Quickly, what's going on in New Hampshire?
Looking at New Hampshire here, again, so looking at 2012, Obama had 52% of the vote, Romney 46%, so a bit closer there. So again, it's not a surprise that the New Hampshire race is very close. Huge issues there is the Democratic incumbent, Jeanne Shaheen, portrayed herself as a moderate. So again, that's no surprise because a lot of Democrats are trying to distance themselves from President Obama. So she's trying to portray herself as someone who sees both sides, most notably agreeing with New Jersey Governor Chris Christie's whole quarantine, in regards to the Ebola issue. He instituted a quarantine there, and she supported that, which is, a rare bipartisan agreement between Democrats and Republicans. She agreed with his policy on that. So again, just one indicator of her move to kind of the move to the middle, as I'd like to call it. We're seeing that in a lot of Senate races.
And Scott Brown, who was a former senator from Massachusetts, how is his role as a former senator playing into this?
Exactly. Well, his role as a foreign senator, mostly he's focused a lot on border security issues and fences. Most memorable saying the cost is irrelevant. Now, immigration hasn't popped up in a lot of the races, but it did a little bit in New Hampshire. And again, that's an issue Republicans like to use, especially when criticizing President Obama, just because they kind of group it in with Ebola, ISIS, and all of kind of the crises facing the Obama administration right now. So again, immigration is big focus.
Anna Giles in the Issue Center as always. Now, Hunter, we're going to send it back over to you with some updates on the 24th Congressional District.
All right, thanks so much, Nick. Yeah, Topher Lane is here back with me. So Topher, talking about this Maffei versus Katko race, a lot of money went into TV ads. I saw them all over the television. Tell us a little bit more about the slander suits, all of that going on.
Yeah, millions of dollars brought in from external funds coming in across the country to this district for these ads. So many slander ads just focusing on taking down the other candidate to try to bring them down. And it was just ad after ad, and you couldn't really get away from slander ads. Very little about their own policies on TV, more towards slandering the other candidate. So a really boxing match race here in the 24th district.
All right, so it's been known to be a little boxing match here in the years since. So who do you see coming out? I mean, Molly told us that we're really not going to see results for some time. Who do you think is going to come out on top?
Yeah, I think it's very close to call. I think right now I have Katko on top, especially with the recent polls. I mean, there was about a 16-point swing between 2 months of polls, which you can't necessarily, you might have to take with a grain of salt, but still, Katko was up by 10 points in a poll a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, a very big lead in points. Maybe it's something you have to take with a grain of salt, but a large lead that you can definitely look at and say that it's possible Katko could come away with this.
Well, we will see if those polls are correct. But for now, talking about Molly, let's toss it over to her where she's watching Colorado's governor's race. And Molly, who really is caring about that race?
Well, Hunter, there is one man in particular that has a particularly vested interest in this race, no one more so than convicted murderer Nathan Dunlop. And this man has been on death row for now 20 years in the state of Colorado. And the reason being, the incumbent governor right now, Democrat John Hickenlooper, had stayed Dunlop's execution last year because of Dunlop's diagnosis with bipolar disease and the costs associated with executing a prisoner. However, he did leave this open for a potential successor to execute him, and that's just what the Republican challenger, Bob Beauprez, intends to do. Beauprez said last May in a statement that if elected, he does plan to execute Nathan Dunlop. We'll have to see what happens.
All right, Molly, thanks. When we come back, a final look at the race for the majority of the Senate. Stay with us.
Red state, blue state, vegan,
carnivore.
We come from different places.
Uptown,
downtown, night owl,
early bird.
We come to different conclusions.
Half empty,
half full.
But when we live united, we create real, lasting change in the building blocks of life. The education, income, and health of our communities, our families, united. Even the person next to us.
Live united.
Real change won't happen without you. So give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Sign up at liveunited.org.
Danse, balance la cadence, ondule bien tes hanches, au bal du dimanche.
You didn't give up on sex. Don't give up on birth control either. There are more methods than you think. Find yours at bedsider.org.
Danse, balance la cadence, ondule bien tes hanches, au bal du dimanche.
You didn't give up on sex. Don't give up on birth control either. There are more methods than you think. Find yours at bedsider.org.
In the small town of Elmira, New York, a boy was born into an all-American family. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 88. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs.
We're now going to toss it back over to Nick and Alex with some final look at some Senate races in Iowa and Louisiana. Guys, back to you.
Thanks, but before we get to those races, we have a breaking news in New Hampshire, where Jeanne Shaheen has defeated incumbent former Senator Scott Brown. What happened there? What's going on with that?
Right. So ABC News has called it, as we said, it's a state won by Obama twice. It only recently started to look like it was going to be in play. It still looks like it could be a big day for Republicans, but that would have been a huge pickup for them. But as we said, probably would have probably expected that Shaheen keeps her seat there.
All right, so now we're going to Iowa now. What are the what's going on in Iowa with that race?
So Iowa's another one of those states that Obama's won twice, and it's a retiring senator, Senator Tom Harkin. The Democratic nominee, Bruce Braley, has not been running a great campaign. He's had a few gaffes. There was some deal with. There was a controversy about his wife suing he and his wife suing their neighbors over chickens walking into their yard. Probably the most significant gaffe of his was he was caught on camera calling the other senator from Iowa a farmer from Iowa who never went to law school. So a lot of the electorate sees him as elitist and out of touch, in contrast with Republican nominee Joni Ernst. She's been, her first ad in the Republican primary, she said, "I grew up castrating pigs on a farm. I'll know how to cut pork in Washington." So she's really endeared herself to the Iowa electorate. She's been groomed as a bit of a rising star in the Republican Party. If she manages to take this Democratic-held seat for the Republicans, it would be really interesting to see how they use her in the future.
Now, moving to Louisiana, that is an interesting the way they have elections in that state. What's going on?
It's called a jungle primary, which means that all candidates run at the same time. So we have two Republican candidates in the race right now, a Tea Party-backed candidate and another candidate. Mary Landrieu, the Democratic incumbent, is running against Bill Cassidy. Bill Cassidy is the second highest polling right now. If neither of the candidates get above 50%, it will go to a runoff in December. Right now, Landrieu, she's one of the most moderate Democrats in the Senate. She has not gotten a lot of money from the Democratic base. One recent issue that she had, recent mistake she made, she said Obama, and when she was talking about why Obama doesn't do well in the South, she said the South has not been a great place for African Americans or for women. Even if that's true, it's probably not something you want to say in the midst of a close Senate race, a little bit of a divisive statement. So that's probably, after Arkansas, which has already flipped, that's probably the next most likely state to flip.
All right, Alex Amico, thanks so much. We're going to go over here to the Issue Center for a final time with Anna Giles. We're talking Iowa and Joni Ernst. What are the major issues that were at play for Iowa voters?
Right, Nick. Very, very interesting election. Just want to take us back to 2012, the presidential election. President Obama had 52% of the vote and his challenger, Mitt Romney, 46%. So a very close race, not surprising for Iowa. But what's interesting this time, and what's fascinated many viewers, voters, is Joni Ernst, the Republican challenger. Now, if she were elected, she would be the first woman to represent Iowa in Congress. So the women's vote is very important here, but she's made a couple of gaffes. She's portrayed herself as really tough when it comes to military. Let's take a look at her military record. She was a lieutenant colonel in the Iowa Army National Guard, and she also ran a convoy from Kuwait into southern Iraq in 2003. Definitely has the boots on the ground experience. She's done a great job of portraying herself as tough on Washington. As Alex mentioned, she did have a commercial where she mentioned castrating hogs on a farm, so she's definitely sticking it to the man image there is what she wants to portray. But where her downfall has been a little bit is on abortion. She is hurting with women because she voted to defund Planned Parenthood as a state senator, and she also voted against federal minimum wage, issues very important to women. So that's kind of where she's hurting there.
All right, well, Anna Giles, now in our final 30 seconds, quickly, what are Joni Ernst, any outside Republican help for her?
I haven't seen much in there. She's pulling the weight by herself there. Again, Iowa is always, a lot of attention is paid to this, and it's been such a controversial election here, just because gaffes on both sides. You know, something I didn't get to mention was that her competitor Bruce Braley has had a couple of gaffes himself. Ones Alex mentioned about Iowa farmers, but again, lots of attention paid to this race.
All right, Anna, thanks so much. Hunter, back over to you.
All right, guys, coming up, a roundtable discussion with some tough questions about the next 2 years. Don't miss it. We'll be right back.
An 8-year-old boy picked up the game of golf from his father. The odds of that same boy then making it to the US and European Pro Golf Tours? 1 in 7 million. The odds of the Big Easy winning the US Open twice? 1 in 1.2 billion. The odds of him having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 110. Ernie Els encourages you to learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
Turning a 20-foot wall into a canvas takes vision. So will getting into college. I've got what it takes. So do you. Turning a 20-foot wall into a canvas takes vision. So will getting into college. I've got what it takes. So do you.
Welcome back to Citrus TV's live election night coverage. Joining me at the desk are all of our talented correspondents to answer a couple final thought questions. So the first one to you, Molly. Social media covering it all. What was your tweet of the night?
Well, I can't say that there's one in particular, but I will tell you something that was missing. Something that we hear in elections every year. We normally hear about terrorism, we hear about healthcare, we hear about the economy. This year, big question mark, gas prices. Absolutely nothing. Because of, it's actually a pleasant topic right around this time with the prices being so low, and under $3 a gallon in many parts of the country. So voters quite content in that area of the vote.
All right, Molly, thanks. Now, Anna and Brian in the Issue Center. President Obama has 2 final years. What's going to make it through Congress and what isn't?
Despite whatever result comes out of tonight, Hunter, I don't think we're going to see much of a change. It's still going to be a gridlock Congress. Some of the issues we can pay attention to, immigration, going to be completely dead, depending on the results tonight, either way. But some of the issues that might actually go through are minimum wage and student loans. Those are some smaller issues that we might see some bipartisan cooperation on.
All right, and Brian?
And kind of bouncing off what Anna said, that gridlock is going to be hugely important if the Senate is ending up in the hands of the Republicans. And again, immigration is going to be probably dead. We'll be watching to see what kind of actions the government takes in regards to the budget and whether or not we'll be facing the same things that we faced in 2011 and 2013 with a potential shutdown.
All right, so Congress to Senate. Alex, what are your projections?
So I think that by the time all the votes are counted, I think we will have a Republican Senate. Individual races, I think that Republicans will take Colorado, will take Iowa and Alaska. Louisiana and Georgia, I think, will both go to runoffs. And I do think that the independent candidate, Greg Orman, is going to win in Kansas. So those are my projections.
All right, and finally, our local correspondents, 24th Congressional District. Who do we have? Max?
I'm sticking with the polls. CATCO is up 10% as the most recent one. Maffei historically has not been able to win a midterm election. I see this seat switching blue to red.
All right, and Caroline?
Right now, I don't really have a projection. I think it's too close to tell right now, even with that 10-point gap being the latest poll. It's too late, or it's too early to tell, excuse me.
What about you, Topher?
I think John Katko will probably take this. I'll reiterate what Max said, that Dan Maffei has never been able to win a midterm election, going on and off on presidential election years. So I think it'll be an interesting race, but I think Katko will come out on top.
2 of 3 Katko. And finally, what we've all been waiting for. Nick, what does this mean for 2016?
Well, a lot of different candidates have been stumping for candidates around the country. You see Mitt Romney going all over the place, all over the country, stumping for candidates. He said he's not running, but we'll just have to see about that. Obviously, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton have been campaigning, and they are 2 candidates that are looking for possible endorsements coming down the road. And a lot of different candidates are going to benefit from this election. As we mentioned, Scott Walker also is going to be another candidate that we're going to look out for in 2016. Vice presidential nominee or presidential nominee, Elizabeth Warren as well. So we'll just have to wait and see exactly what names pop out of the woodwork going forward.
All right, well, thanks everybody for doing this. Well, that'll do it for our election night coverage. Polls will continue to close and votes will be counted. A special thank you to all of our correspondents right here, talented indeed, and to all of the producers and cameramen and crew beyond these cameras to help make this night possible. Many campaigns have come to an end as America has spoken, but tomorrow a new campaign begins for 2016. Until then, for all of us here at Citrus TV, I'm Hunter Saenz. Good night.